Autumn in Westfield, Massachusetts was a season when the maple trees on street corners turned crimson and the morning and evening chill deepened. Grace Harrison took a deep breath as she opened her front door, returning home from the library. Today had been another long day. The weight of her responsibilities as a librarian and the burden of raising her 16-year-old daughter Madison alone always pressed down on her shoulders. "Welcome home, Mom." The bright voice that reached her from the living room belonged to Madison. Her daughter looked up from the dining table where she had spread out her homework, wearing a warm smile. A small sense of peace settled in Grace's heart, as it always did. Even 4 years after her divorce, her daughter's voice echoing through this small house was her most precious treasure. "How was your day?" Grace asked, setting her bag on a chair. "I think the history test went well." "Oh, Grandma called." Grace's expression clouded slightly. Phone calls from her mother Dorothy always left her with complicated feelings. Her mother often brought up topics about her younger daughter Olivia. Was there something she needed? She wanted to talk about Thanksgiving. "She said she'd call again tomorrow night," Madison said, carefully choosing her words as she read her mother's expression. Grace nodded slightly. 3 weeks until Thanksgiving. This year, she was hosting the family at her house. Her father Robert, her mother Dorothy, and her sister Olivia. It would be the first time in a long while that the whole family would gather together. Olivia had made a name for herself as a rising chef in Boston. The restaurant she ran, Seasons, had become popular among local food enthusiasts, and recently she had even started appearing on cooking shows. Their parents were genuinely proud of their daughter's success, and family gatherings always centered around Olivia's achievements. As Grace headed to the kitchen, she remembered her divorce 4 years ago. Her marriage to her ex-husband Jacob had appeared peaceful on the surface, but was actually filled with his infidelity and lies. Divorce had been an inevitable choice, but her family's reaction was colder than expected. Her mother had said, "You should have been more patient," and her father had criticized her, saying, "Think about Madison." Meanwhile, Olivia, citing her busy schedule, had hardly been any support to her sister. "Mom, are you okay?" Madison called out with concern. "Yes, I'm fine," Grace smiled as she opened the refrigerator. "What would you like for dinner tonight?" "I'd like your homemade hamburgers." "Grandma always says, Olivia's cooking is wonderful, but I like your cooking better." Madison's frank words warmed Grace's heart. Ever since she was young, her daughter had been sensitive to the subtle attitudes of her grandparents and aunt. Madison had quietly watched as Grace's topics were brushed aside at family gatherings while Olivia's success stories went on endlessly. Actually, Grace's cooking skills were certainly not inferior. While being a librarian might seem mundane, she led the community's reading promotion activities, organized creative workshops for children, and was loved by many people. Her cooking, which started as a hobby, had become so skilled that neighbors would come asking her to teach me that recipe. However, Grace was modest by nature and didn't actively promote her talents. "I want to make this year's Thanksgiving special," Grace said while kneading ground beef. "It's been so long since the whole family will be coming." Madison watched her mother's profile. In Grace's eyes dwelt a poignant wish to be recognized by her family. Her daughter was always thinking about what she could do for her mother. Every time she heard friends talk about being cherished by their grandparents, she questioned her own family's situation. After dinner, the two sat side by side on the sofa, watching the TV news. During a segment introducing local community events, footage of Olivia talking about her new menu appeared. "Oh, Olivia's on TV," Grace stared at the screen. Her sister was as beautiful as ever, answering the interview with a confident expression. "My style is to give traditional recipes inherited from my family a modern twist," Olivia said. Madison clicked her tongue softly. The recipes inherited from their grandmother were actually ones that Grace had carefully recorded and preserved. Olivia sometimes spoke about these recipes as if she had discovered them herself. "Mom, let me help with this year's Thanksgiving preparations," Madison took her mother's hand. "I'm sure it will be a wonderful Thanksgiving." Grace felt the warmth of her daughter's hand and nodded slightly. She didn't know if her family would recognize her, but at least she had Madison, her greatest supporter, by her side. That should have been enough happiness. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, when Grace came home after finishing a long day at the library, she noticed an unread message on her cell phone. The sender was Olivia. When she opened the message, the usual concise, business-only text jumped out at her. "Grace, about this year's Thanksgiving, could you make it a vegetarian menu? I've been health-conscious lately. Dad and Mom agree too. Thanks." Grace stared at her phone, unable to move for a while. The Thanksgiving menu was already decided. Turkey prepared with their grandmother's recipe, cranberry sauce, stuffing, and the pumpkin pie that the whole family looked forward to. These were dishes that had become family traditions over many years. "What's wrong, Mom?" Madison poked her head out from the living room. "Olivia contacted me," Grace sighed deeply. "She wants me to make it a vegetarian menu this year." Madison's brows furrowed. Isn't it strange to suddenly ask for something like that? That night, her mother Dorothy called. She seemed to have already heard from Olivia, and her voice on the other end of the line was oddly excited. "Grace, don't you think Olivia's suggestion is wonderful? We're getting older too, and considering our health, this change comes at a good time. You'll get to challenge yourself with something new too." Grace gripped the receiver tightly as she answered. "But Mom, aren't there people looking forward to traditional Thanksgiving dishes?" "It'll be fine. Olivia said she'd teach you some recipes. That girl really is a genius when it comes to cooking." After hanging up, Grace sat down at the kitchen table. With only 2 weeks until Thanksgiving, she had to come up with a completely new menu. And she had to do it while being prepared to be compared to her sister, who was a professional chef. Starting the next day, Grace began researching vegetarian recipes during breaks from her library work. She borrowed cookbooks, searched the internet, and asked colleagues for advice. Fortunately, some of her library colleagues were vegetarians and kindly shared recipes with her. Meanwhile, Madison was feeling anxious at school. During lunch break, while looking at her smartphone with her friend Emma, she noticed a new post on Olivia's Instagram. The photo showed a meal at the upscale steakhouse, Prime Cut. Olivia and her friends were pictured with big smiles in front of large steaks. The post was dated yesterday. "That's your aunt, right?" Emma pointed at the screen. "But didn't you say she became a vegetarian?" Anger welled up in Madison's chest. However, she wondered whether she should tell her mother this fact. Grace was already working hard to prepare the new menu. Learning the truth now might hurt her mother even more. When she got home, Grace was struggling with unfamiliar vegetables in the kitchen. "I'm thinking of making portobello mushroom Wellington," her mother explained with a tired smile. "As a main dish to replace the turkey." Madison's heart ached seeing her mother's effort. She agonized late into the night about whether to show her mother Olivia's Instagram photo. In the end, she decided to keep quiet to protect her mother. 1 week before Thanksgiving, Grace was making trial runs. Portobello mushroom Wellington, butternut squash risotto, roasted root vegetable tart, and vegan pumpkin pie. Each dish was labor-intensive, and the ingredient costs were higher than expected. While a librarian's salary was never easy, Grace worked hard with the single desire to please her family. "Mom, let me taste it," Madison came into the kitchen. After taking a bite of the portobello mushroom Wellington, her daughter's face brightened. "This is really delicious. It's better than Aunt's restaurant food." A look of relief crossed Grace's face. "Really? Really? Everyone will definitely be impressed." However, complex thoughts swirled in Madison's mind. Should she tell her mother about her aunt's lie, or wait until after Thanksgiving? Her friend Emma had said, "You absolutely should tell her," but seeing her mother's earnest efforts, she couldn't bring herself to say it. 3 days before Thanksgiving, Dorothy called again. "Did you hear about Olivia's new restaurant? The second location opens next month. She really is a wonderful child. I'm looking forward to hearing lots of interesting stories from her on Thanksgiving Day." After hanging up, Grace slumped onto the sofa. Conversations with her mother always ended with Olivia's success stories. She was rarely asked about her own preparations. That night, Madison knocked on her mother's bedroom door. "Mom, I need to talk to you." "What is it?" Madison hesitated for a moment but decided to tell the truth. "It's about Aunt Olivia." "What about Olivia?" Actually, Madison took a deep breath. Aunt Olivia isn't really vegetarian. I saw her Instagram photo from the other day at a steakhouse. Grace's expression froze. When was that photo? Last week. It was a photo of her eating a big steak. After a moment of silence, Grace laughed softly. It was a laugh mixed with sadness and resignation. "I see. But all the preparations are finished anyway, so let's keep it this way." "Mom, aren't you angry?" "There's no point in being angry. I'm sure Olivia has her own reasons." Grace took her daughter's hand. "Besides, I think it was good to challenge myself with new cooking. You said it was delicious too." Madison was moved by her mother's kindness while feeling strong anger toward her aunt and grandparents. Why did her mother always have to endure such unreasonable treatment? The day before Thanksgiving, a message arrived from Olivia. "I'll come help tomorrow. I'm looking forward to cooking together as sisters after such a long time." Grace's heart lifted for the first time in a while. Even though her relationship with her sister was strained, family was still family. Tomorrow, perhaps they could work together for the first time in a long while to create a wonderful Thanksgiving. That night, Madison was writing in her diary in her room. "Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. No matter how hard Mom works, it'll probably be all about Aunt Olivia again. But if the family does anything to hurt Mom, I won't stay silent." Madison closed her diary and decided to go to bed early to prepare for tomorrow. However, she couldn't fall asleep easily. The morning of Thanksgiving, the entire town of Westfield was bathed in golden sunlight. Grace woke up at 6 in the morning and quietly headed to the kitchen. She didn't want to waste a single minute or second to make this day perfect. The portobello mushroom Wellington was already prepped, and the vegetables for the butternut squash risotto were carefully cut and arranged. "Good morning, Mom." Madison appeared in the kitchen, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Is there anything I can help with?" "Thank you, but you can sleep a little longer." Grace smiled at her daughter. "You can help me decorate the dining room this afternoon." Madison looked at her mother's expression. Grace's face showed a complex mix of anticipation and anxiety. The earnest wish to have her family recognize her worth was dwelling in her eyes. Around 2 in the afternoon, mother and daughter worked together to prepare the dining room. Grace spread out the beautiful lace tablecloth inherited from her grandmother and decorated it with autumn-colored arrangements. Madison carefully arranged the delicate china that had been used since her grandmother's time. Each plate was etched with history, symbolizing 3 generations of family bonds. "What's this?" Madison took out a small silver box from the cabinet. "Those are Grandma's handmade napkin rings," Grace explained as she took the box. "Each one has a family member's name engraved on it. Yours was made when you were born." Madison picked up the napkin ring with her name engraved on it and smiled softly. While she had few memories of her grandmother, her heart warmed knowing that love had been left for her in this way. At 4 in the afternoon, Grace was putting the finishing touches on everything. She lit candles and placed a handmade autumn flower arrangement in the center of the table. The dining room was arranged as beautifully as a magazine photo. However, that beauty wasn't flashy at all, but filled with homey warmth. "Mom, it's really lovely," Madison exclaimed in admiration. "Everyone will definitely be impressed." Grace looked at the clock. 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The scheduled time for her family's arrival. She checked her appearance in the mirror and removed her apron. The deep burgundy dress she had chosen for today harmonized beautifully with the autumn decorations. At 5:15 p.m., her cell phone rang. It was a message from Olivia. "Grace, I'm really sorry. I suddenly fell ill. I have a fever too, so I don't think I can make it today. I'm sorry after all your preparations." Grace felt as if her heart stopped for a moment. "Olivia is sick and can't come," she informed Madison. "Really?" I hope she's okay, Madison answered with concern, but inwardly she doubted her aunt's words. At 5:30 p.m., her father Robert called. Olivia contacted us. The poor girl seems quite unwell. Dorothy and I are going to check on her. We won't be able to come to your place today, but I hope you understand. Grace gripped the receiver as she answered. Of course, Dad. Please take care of Olivia. Please tell her to get well soon. After hanging up, Grace stared at the beautifully decorated table in the dining room. Of the 4 places that had been set, only 2 would actually be used. Mom, are you okay? Madison placed her hand on her mother's shoulder. Yes, I'm fine, Grace smiled bravely. I'm worried about Olivia's condition, but let's have a wonderful Thanksgiving, just the 2 of us. However, disappointment and anxiety swirled in Grace's heart. Despite challenging herself with a new menu and making perfect preparations, she ultimately couldn't get even one family member to recognize her efforts. Around 6 in the evening, Madison was checking her smartphone in her room. While replying to Thanksgiving messages from several friends, a new notification appeared on Instagram. Olivia's stories had been updated. When Madison tapped it, an unbelievable scene appeared on the screen. It was a video of Olivia, Robert, and Dorothy toasting with smiles at the upscale French restaurant, La Belle Époque, against the backdrop of luxurious interior decoration. Extravagant dishes were arranged on the table, and all 3 clearly looked like they were having fun. Madison's hands began to tremble. As she stared at the screen, anger and sadness welled up from deep in her chest. Her aunt had skipped her mother's Thanksgiving citing illness, but was actually enjoying time at an upscale restaurant with her grandparents. And her grandparents, while claiming to care for their sick daughter, were actually enjoying dinner with their other daughter. Mom. Madison called her mother in a trembling voice. Grace poked her head out from the kitchen. What's wrong? Look, at this, Madison hesitantly held out her smartphone. The moment Grace saw the screen, her face turned pale. The plate she was holding nearly slipped, and she hurriedly placed it on the counter. She watched the video over and over, trying to accept reality. When was this posted? Grace's voice was hoarse. 30 minutes ago. It's a live stream, so it was filmed just now. Grace leaned against the wall. It became hard to breathe, and her eyes began to burn. She had spent weeks preparing for today, challenging herself with new cooking and creating perfect decorations. Yet her family had never intended to participate in her Thanksgiving from the beginning. They had made up false excuses to decline and were instead enjoying themselves at an upscale restaurant. Why? Grace whispered softly. Why do they always lie to me? Madison embraced her mother's shoulders. She felt Grace's body trembling slightly. In that moment, something changed decisively in the 16-year-old girl's heart. Mom, don't cry, Madison said while wiping her mother's cheek. It's okay. I'm here. Grace was touched by her daughter's kindness, and more tears overflowed. I'm sorry, Maddie. I wanted to make it a fun Thanksgiving. Mom did nothing wrong, Madison said firmly. The ones who are wrong are the people who lied. Madison quietly closed her smartphone and took her mother's hand. Mom, sit down. I have something to tell you. Grace was prompted by her daughter to sit on the sofa. Madison ran to her room and returned carrying a thick notebook. Actually, I've been preparing something for a long time, Madison explained as she opened the notebook. For this past year, I've been recording everything the family has done to you. The notebook contained various events carefully recorded with dates. Incidents where Olivia excluded Grace from family gatherings, times when grandparents ignored Grace's stories and only talked about Olivia, and instances when they posted family photos on social media without Grace were organized chronologically. Maddie, what is this? I wanted to protect you, Madison's eyes held determination beyond her years. I can't stay silent anymore. This time, I'm going to reveal the truth. Grace was surprised by her daughter's mature appearance while feeling completely sorry. She regretted exposing such a young daughter to the ugly side of adults. But Maddie, the relationship with the family. Mom, Madison gripped her mother's hand tightly. Real family wouldn't do things like this. Blood relations alone don't make a family, do they? That night, mother and daughter spent a special Thanksgiving, just the two of them. Every vegetarian dish Grace had made with love tasted wonderful. The following week, Madison worked more concentratedly than usual in her video production class at school. Mr. Miller, the instructor, had assigned students to create a documentary with the theme of family. Madison, could you show me the outline of your project? Mr. Miller approached her desk. Madison carefully chose her words as she answered. I'd like to create something titled Family Truth, depicting the gap between surface happiness and reality. That's an interesting theme. What kind of approach are you considering? I want to use actual footage and photos to follow the changes in family relationships chronologically, Madison explained while looking at the notebook in her hands. I want to document the process of how a family that initially appears happy actually systematically excludes one member. Mr. Miller looked impressed. That's quite a mature theme. But since it's sensitive content, you'll need to be very careful in the production. That night, Madison was organizing the evidence she had collected over the year in her room. Screenshots saved on her smartphone, family photos taken at her grandparents' house, and recordings of Instagram stories from Thanksgiving Day. Each piece told the story of the discriminatory treatment Grace received from her family. The most decisive evidence was a video filmed last spring. At the grandparents' anniversary dinner, Robert was saying, "Olivia is our pride. We're happy to have such a successful daughter." At that time, even though Grace was at the same table, she was treated as if she didn't exist. This is enough, Madison whispered softly. In December, an invitation to Olivia's annual Christmas party arrived as usual. This year she would be hosting at her newly purchased penthouse. To Grace and Madison. This year's Christmas party will be held at my new home. December 23rd from 6 p.m. Dress code is formal. I've prepared special surprises this year, so please look forward to it. You don't need to bring anything. From Olivia. Grace showed a complex expression as she read the invitation. Since the Thanksgiving incident, she had been deeply thinking about her relationship with her family. Meanwhile, Madison's eyes sparkled. Mom, this is the perfect opportunity, Madison took her mother's hand. Opportunity for what? An opportunity to reveal the truth, Madison answered with a determined expression. When everyone gathers together, I'll show them the family's true nature. Grace felt anxious about her daughter's words. Maddie, what are you thinking? Don't worry, Mom. I won't hurt anyone. I'll just let them know the truth. That weekend, Madison began the final editing of her video. The 15-minute documentary began with happy family photos from the past. Heartwarming photos of Grace and Olivia as children, taken together with their parents, appeared one after another. However, as time progressed, the content of the images changed. From around the time Olivia graduated from culinary school, Grace's treatment in family photos had clearly changed. She was pushed to the edges, and sometimes completely excluded from photos. Madison carefully but effectively expressed this change through video. Particularly shocking was footage from last Christmas. While Olivia was giving presents to their parents, Grace was alone in the kitchen cleaning up. The camera coolly captured this contrast. The video concluded with the Instagram story from Thanksgiving Day. The scene of Olivia, who had been absent citing illness, and Robert and Dorothy, who claimed to be caring for their sick daughter, toasting at an upscale restaurant. And as a contrast, photos of the simple but heartfelt dinner Grace and Madison shared alone at the same time were shown. It's finished, Madison whispered with deep satisfaction. The following week in video production class, Madison submitted her completed work to Mr. Miller. The teacher watched the video with a serious expression and remained silent for a while after it ended. Madison, this is a very powerful work, Mr. Miller slowly began to speak. Both technically and content-wise, it's incredibly polished for a high school student's work. Thank you. However, you need to be careful when making this public. Since real people appear in it, there are privacy concerns. Madison nodded. I understand. But I want people to understand the importance of conveying the truth. How about submitting it to the regional student video contest? I think the judges would be moved too. Madison's heart raced. Really? Yes. But make sure to get your family's permission. After school that day, Madison told her mother about the video. Grace was surprised at first, but seeing her daughter's serious expression, she quietly listened. I don't want to cause trouble for you, Madison explained. But if things continue like this, you'll keep receiving unfair treatment forever. After thinking for a long time, Grace placed her hand on her daughter's cheek. I know you're thinking of me. But attacking the family like this. It's not an attack, Madison strongly denied. I'm just showing the truth. If that looks like an attack, it's because they're doing wrong things, isn't it? The day before the Christmas party, Madison slipped a small USB memory stick into her backpack. She had already confirmed that Olivia's new home had a large TV. Tomorrow's party should be fun, Grace said while checking her newly purchased dress. Yes, Madison smiled. It will definitely be an unforgettable party. That night, Madison made her final preparations. She planned to screen the video as a Christmas present for the family. She had even changed the title to The Harmless, to Our Beloved Family. Protect Mom, Madison whispered softly to her reflection in the mirror. I won't let anyone hurt Mom anymore. The next day, Olivia's penthouse was gorgeously decorated for Christmas. Around the table lined with premium champagne and hors d'oeuvres, Robert, Dorothy, Olivia, and Grace and Madison chatted. I have a special surprise this year, Olivia smiled with satisfaction. But before that, Madison apparently has a present for the family. Madison stood up and took out the USB memory stick. I have a video I'd like everyone to see. It's a documentary I made at school, filmed about our family. How wonderful! Dorothy applauded. Our granddaughter really is talented. When the video appeared on the large TV, nostalgic family photos played at first. Everyone watched the screen with smiles. However, as the video progressed, the atmosphere in the room changed. When the scenes of Grace being gradually excluded from the family circle, the Thanksgiving lies, and the toasting scene at the upscale restaurant were shown, the room was completely enveloped in silence. When the video ended, Olivia spoke in a trembling voice. This is a misunderstanding. Work has been really busy. A misunderstanding? Madison answered calmly. Was pretending to be vegetarian while actually eating steak also a misunderstanding? Skipping Thanksgiving due to illness while toasting at an upscale restaurant on the same day? Robert began explaining frantically. Maddie, there are adult circumstances. Adult circumstances? Anger crept into Madison's voice. Do you know how hard Mom worked to prepare? She learned new cooking, made perfect decorations, and desperately tried to please everyone. Grace took Madison's hand. That's enough, Maddie. It's not enough, Madison squeezed her mother's hand back. This isn't revenge. I just wanted you to know the truth. Real family would cherish each other, wouldn't they? Dorothy said in a tearful voice, but we are family. We have blood ties. Grace slowly stood up. Blood ties alone don't make a family, her voice was quiet but filled with firm resolve. Real family are people who respect and support each other. Lying and hurting each other is not what families do. Olivia approached her sister crying, but Grace stepped back. Until now, I desperately wanted to be recognized by you, Grace continued. But my daughter taught me. What's really important is the relationship with people who love me. Madison stood next to her mother and firmly linked arms with her. Let's go, Mom. As the two left the penthouse, they didn't look back at the sound of sobbing behind them. The year that followed became a time of change for everyone. Olivia's relationship with their parents also deteriorated, and for the first time she experienced true loneliness. 6 months later, she sent Grace a letter of apology, but no reply came. A year later, when they accidentally met on the street, Olivia apologized tearfully. Grace quietly answered, I forgive you, but we can't go back to how things were. Robert and Dorothy were completely cut off by their granddaughter Madison. The two spent their days in regret, continuing to send letters regularly. 2 years later, limited contact finally resumed, but their relationship never returned to what it had been before. Meanwhile, Grace and Madison built a new, chosen family. The warm relationships with library colleagues, kind-hearted neighbors, and Madison's friends' families became true bonds that transcended blood relations. The next Thanksgiving was spent with this new family, becoming a truly happy holiday filled with laughter. Madison looked at her mother and thought, sometimes having the courage to tell the truth is real love. And family is determined not by blood ties, but by heart connections.